Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries. I'm John and this is Hannah.
Hi.
And all this month we're going to be looking at the various prompts for RPGaDay 2025. So let's get into it.
Day 19 and the cue is Destiny.
Yeah, and I'm just going to start off by saying for this episode that when it comes to RPGs, I'm not really a fan of Destiny, to be honest. I'd be quite happy to entirely leave it and not have a Destiny. And that might just be because when I think of Destiny, I tend to think of something that's been predetermined or predefined. And one of the joys of an RPG for me, as we've talked about previously in episodes, is the fact that you have choice to make decisions for your own character. And obviously, yeah, the world and the NPCs and whatever all factor into that. But at the end of the day, you have player agency to determine what your character's going to do. Whereas if it's like a tightly focused and predefined Destiny, you don't really have that choice. And I'm not talking about sort of something that, like, a Destiny can be done well. Like, a GM can sort of keep it vague. Like, you know, if someone says, like, oh, you will meet darkness below the boughs of a forest tree, and that's as far as they go. That could fit anything. And as long as the GM's not trying to force you into a forest every 5 minutes, that's absolutely fine. If it's a very specific Destiny where it's like, oh, you are going to face this enemy in battle and he's going to kill you, that's an entirely different matter. Because then that seems to me like we're saying in the game, this is going to happen. And it's like, well, unless you're playing a game that deliberately sort of leans into that fatalism and that sort of like, oh, I know I'm going to die, so I'm going to live each day as though it's my last, it seems to sort of rob you of that choice.
Yeah, it very much becomes a scripted story rather than an RPG at that point. But there's also that level of plot armor makes for a better story than random dice rolls for some people.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that if you go into a game knowing that's what you're getting into and you're fine with that, that's absolutely not a problem. And, you know, you can have a very enjoyable game doing that. Like, I love playing Call of Cthulhu. And we all know the destiny of most of Call of Cthulhu like characters is to see things man was not meant to see and go mad. Or you read from a wrong book, you go mad. You do X, you go mad. That's how most of them tend to end. But you know that getting into the game, or you should do, at least if you've not played it before, the GM should have explained that to you. And you accept that as part of the premise of the game. And I really enjoy it because you can lean into it. You can play with those tropes. Like, if I'm playing a Call of Cthulhu game, I'll be the person who's like, oh, some sort of evil book wrapped in human skin. Yeah, I'll read that. What's the worst that could happen? Oh, there's a fog on the moors and mysterious sounds. Yeah, I'll go and investigate it, guys. I'll be right back. Don't worry about it. And you lean into it because it's all part of the fun. Whereas if it's a game where that's not specifically incorporated into the fun of the game, then this whole sort of notion of a preconceived destiny can, like I say, sort of rob choice out of it. It makes it feel a little bit stale. Again, just my personal perspective. If you love having a destiny in a game, you crack on, you do you.
I mean, yeah, it's something that's come up a bit recently in the one-shots that I've been doing with my gaming group.
Yeah.
One of the guys is like, we keep having quite a lot of like real-world bleed of things that could be read as allegory for real-world stuff. And okay. I think maybe part of the reason that we're not so keen on Destiny at the minute is that those sort of stories tend to feed things we don't quite agree with.
Yeah. I mean, for me, and the way I would prefer to do a Destiny, because I'm not saying you shouldn't use the concept in a game, because it's an archetypal concept in literature, you know, the hero's journey, Destiny, all of that sort of stuff. It's a very, if you're running fantasy games, it's a very present part of fantasy games, but you've got it in science fiction games too. I mean, look at the Dune books and the sort of Golden Path in that. It's in a lot of literature, so I can understand people wanting to bring a bit of that into their games, because quite often we take literary or film sort of inspirations and incorporate them into our games.
See, I think this is why Lord of the Rings is one of the best, because Frodo's not destined to take that ring anywhere. Frodo was never destined to be anywhere near that ring. It just happened to end up in the hands of a hobbit.
Oh, but did it just happen to end up in his hands, or was he destined to have it in his hands? But no, you make a very good point there, because I was just about to say that one of the best ways I can think of to use Destiny is when, as a GM, you have the very vaguest and lightest of ideas where something might go, and you don't force it down that path. But if events contrive so they head down that path, you've just dropped a couple of little things in. So when you look back on it, it looks like, oh yeah, all these events were like leading up to this, even though you've not forced it. And again, we're now going into the regular John hops on about Wolfrup section of the episode for regular listeners. So in the Wolfrup game I'm running for our LARP friends at the moment, we had one of the characters who was originally trying to become a knight of a group of knights called the Black Gods. They're like knights of the god of death who protect cemeteries. And he'd, at some point during the event, he'd acquired a magic sword that has like the spirit of an ancient Bretonnian knight in it who got killed when he was on a quest. And it can talk to him and stuff like that. You know, standard magic sword sort of stuff. And one of the other players was like, look, you don't really seem to be down with this whole like god of death stuff. And the player did quite a good speech and was like, look, all I'm saying is there's ways you can be a knight and uphold like knightly virtues without necessarily going for this particular knightly order, because you know, like committing your life to a god is like a big thing, and you've really got to be all in if you're doing that. So he was like, oh, I'm not sure about that. He was like, oh, maybe I'll talk to the spirit of the knight in my sword about becoming like a questing knight, like questing for the grail or something. Having looked at the rules myself, I know that like you can only really pick up those careers if you're Bretonnian. Obviously we're in the Empire, they're not Bretonnian. So I happen to be like just looking at the player's character sheet, and I'm like, oh, I know, because he's got quite a big family, because he's rolled out lots of siblings and stuff like that. And looking at it, I happen to go, oh, I noticed he's got speak Bretonnian on his character sheet. And I just mentioned offhand, I was like, oh, how come you've got that speak Bretonnian? He was like, oh, well, my dad taught me when I was like younger. I'm like, oh, okay, Sam, no problem. We carried on with the game. Then later on, they met an NPC who was an elf, incredibly long-lived, and he mentioned like, oh, I've actually been to the Empire before. He was like, yeah, I came to the Empire with this knight back in the day, and he drops the name of the knight, and oh, what would you know? It's the player's father. So then they're all like, oh, so he is actually Bretonnian by like descent, or half Bretonnian. So I was like, oh, fancy that. So he can now like go into this career. It's a nice way of getting him into the career he wanted to go into. His sort of career's been like classes in Wolfrup. But so the players afterwards were like, oh yeah, and he got that Bretonnian sword, and he said his dad taught him Bretonnian when he was younger. And they were like, oh, did you plan all that out like from the start? And I was quite upfront about it. I was like, no, I didn't. But that's how I think Destiny should be done in RPGs. Like things just came together then, and I just gave it a very little nudge to aim it in the direction that the player wanted anyway, because they wanted to go into like this Bretonnian only career, and I'm like, well, all I've got to do is give it a slight little nudge like that, and all of this stuff just lines up, and they can have the career they want, they can do what they want, everyone's happy.
Whereas I tend to think that if I'm going to put something about Destiny in a game, it's going to be there specifically in the hopes that the players will subvert it in some way.
Yeah, and I mean, that can be a great thing as well. I mean, if the player's down with it, and as long as you're not trying to force it as like 100% this Destiny's happening, regardless of what you want, going like, oh, I'm fated to die because Baron von Leibowitz or whatever is going to kill me like he killed my father, but then like trying to find a way to get out of that, as long as you believe like there is a way out of it and it's worthwhile doing it, or you're playing a game where you've accepted that like what you're doing is ultimately futile and you're fine with that, then yeah, that can work. But again, I think the GM and the players have both got to buy into whatever way you're
very
approaching
much
it.
So.
Whereas I think the sort of Destiny I tend to rail against is one where the GM just decides like there's going to be a Destiny for a player, and then they try and sort of force the player onto those railroads heading down that Destiny. Whereas if you just sort of suggest something and the player runs with it, fine. However, if you suggest it and they ignore it, you've also got to accept that, because RPGs are all about choice at the end of the day. So that's it from me and Hannah for this RPGaDay 2025 episode.
Bye.
Hopefully you'll join us in the next one. And until we see you again, take care, stay safe, and whenever you're playing, have fun.